Look closely, not at the flickering screen before you, but into the abyss that opens with the onset of night, when consciousness sheds the shackles of logic and allows truth to reveal itself in its most bizarre forms. Recall that one dream that left behind not just a fleeting fright, but a sticky, acrid feeling of revulsion, as if you had touched something forbidden, something rotting within you. Not a mundane nightmare with a toothy monster from children's fairy tales. No, we are talking about something far more sophisticated, deeply personal in its ugliness. Perhaps it was a figure whose presence caused an uncontrollable shiver of contempt, as if all your internal filters had suddenly collapsed, exposing something unbearable, a silent scream of revulsion vibrating in every cell of your being long after waking, when daylight seems but a pale cover for what you witnessed, or a relentless pursuer, devoid of face and form, whose shadow stretched over your innermost fears, reflecting a terror you couldn't name but recognized with chilling certainty, like recognizing your own breath in the dark. This is not a random projection of chaos, not a disorderly collection of images thrown to the surface of your psyche. This is a scandalous mirror of the soul, impartially reflecting precisely what we most vehemently rejected, denied, buried deep within ourselves. We work so diligently to build flawless facades, so carefully hide unsightly traits, so masterfully convince ourselves of our own virtue, that when these exiled aspects manifest in a pure, undistorted form, even if in the symbolic, grotesque form of a night vision, our ego experiences a shock bordering on complete rejection. This repulsive figure, this relentless pursuer, this inexpressible monster, they did not come from outside to torment you, nor are they a product of external threats. They are messengers from your own depths, embodiments of those aspects of yourself that were exiled into the subconscious, suppressed, labeled as unworthy, dangerous, or shameful. They are your shadow, knocking on the doors of consciousness, demanding recognition, demanding integration before it consumes you. The most striking aspect of this phenomenon is not the mere appearance of these figures, but the degree of emotional reaction they evoke. Is not just discomfort, is often a deep, intuitive knowing, almost a recognition that what stands before you is something you meticulously concealed even from yourself, something that is yours by birthright but was rejected. This is not weakness, not a sign of pathology as we might have been taught. Paradoxically, this visceral revulsion, this deep internal protest, this shame or fear, is the most precise guide to an inexhaustible source of strength, to forgotten wisdom, to the solution of a problem whose existence you might not even have suspected in your waking life. Every time you turn away from this mirror, every time you dismiss these images as mere nightmares, you deprive yourself of access to colossal potential, to wholeness, to true freedom. But why does this mechanism work so flawlessly? Why does our inner world so inventively create these frightening reflections? To understand this, we need to return to the scene of the very first transgression. Allow me to lead you along a path that leads not outward but inward, to the very source of what we call the shadow. We have spoken of its manifestations, of figures that pursue you in the twilight labyrinths of dreams, of monsters whose outlines evoke terror, of faces repulsive to the point of trembling, yet strangely familiar. Now it is time to ask a question that demands not a superficial answer, but a deep, almost archaeological exploration of your own memory. At what exact point in your being did this rejection originate? When and why did you decide to exile from yourself those qualities that now return to you as phantoms of the night? Recall, was there a moment in your life when audacious ambition, which pushed you towards greatness, was labeled inappropriate pride or greed? When a healthy, instinctive desire to assert your boundaries, to express your will, even healthy aggression, was branded as rudeness, anger, or ill manners? Perhaps it happened when your inner voice, your intuition, the whisper of irrational knowledge was silenced by cold reason, declared foolishness or madness. At what point did you learn that being vulnerable is not strength but weakness, that openness to the world is an invitation to pain, not connection? When was the right to err, to be spontaneous, to be clumsy, taken from you, replaced by a demand for flawlessness, fear of judgment, paralyzing perfectionism? Who or what instilled in you that being yourself with all your imperfections, impulses, and illogicalities is bad, shameful, or dangerous? Perhaps it was the disappointed gaze of a parent when you displayed something improper, or the ridicule of peers when you dared to be different. Maybe it was a lesson in school where creative madness was suppressed by strict discipline and free thought was replaced by rote learning. Or perhaps it was the echo of a collective voice proclaiming some traits as virtues and others as vices, leaving no room for the entire spectrum of human experience. Each such no, spoken to yourself or heard from the world, was a brick in the wall built around your true essence. Every suppressed desire, every rejected emotion, every unspoken thought is an exile sent to the prison of the unconscious. And this prison, which we call the shadow, is not empty. It is filled with living energy, those very qualities that you once deemed unacceptable, but which are in fact an integral part of your wholeness. These rejected aspects do not disappear. They merely await their moment, their opportunity to be recognized and integrated. They knock on the doors of your consciousness through dreams, through disturbing images, through those figures that seemed alien to you, but are merely a distorted reflection of your own unused potential. The pursuer in your dream is not an external enemy, but something within you that you have long driven away. The monster is not chaos from without, but your own wild, untamed power that you have not allowed to manifest. The repulsive figure is not the world's ugliness, but your own suppressed ugliness, which upon closer inspection turns out to be unique beauty and power. They are messengers speaking in the language of symbols and sensations because words were once forbidden. They return to remind you of forgotten gifts, of hidden resources, of your true, uncensored nature. And this process of return, this great reunion, begins with the understanding that these exiles are not unique in their position. They are part of a much older and universal mechanism inherent in each of us. Understanding this inner drama unfolding in the depths of our psyche begins with comprehending the universal laws by which the shadow operates. It is not merely a repository of our vices or shameful desires. No, the shadow is both gold and lead. It is ambition once branded as arrogance or vulnerability rejected as weakness. It is the spark of genius extinguished by the fear of being different or natural aggression that society deemed unacceptable, even though it is a driving force for protecting one's boundaries. Everything that was declared unworthy or shameful and banished from the conscious field of the personality, does not disappear without a trace. It goes underground, gaining its own semi-autonomous existence. Imagine an ancient ritual of banishment from a tribe. A member of the collective displays a quality that the community declares undesirable, threatening its foundations. He is exiled. He goes into the wilderness bearing the mark of an outcast, but his energy, his potential, his unlearned lesson remain outside the community, becoming a phantom pain for all. Something similar happens within us when a child and then an adult learns that certain qualities, anger, passion, the desire to be first, or conversely, tenderness, the need for peace, even the need for imperfection, are unacceptable to their tribe, family, school, society. These qualities are banished from the conscious field. They do not disappear. They go into the unconscious, becoming that very shadow which begins to live its own life, demanding recognition, but no longer as part of the whole, but as something alien, splintered, sometimes even hostile. And this is where the second universal principle comes into play, the principle of unpaid energy. The energy contained in exiled qualities does not dissipate into thin air. It accumulates. It's like a debt you don't want to acknowledge, hoping it will simply vanish. The longer you avoid paying it, the more the interest grows. This accumulated energy manifests in projections. We see in other people what we don't want to see in ourselves. We vehemently condemn greed in someone else, even though we ourselves are afraid to acknowledge our own need for resources. We despise others' weakness because our own vulnerability seems unbearable to us. Or this energy finds its way into dreams, materializing in images that frighten, haunt, provoke revulsion, because this is precisely how we treat those parts of ourselves that have been exiled. A classic example of this mechanism, imprinted in the collective unconscious, is the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Robert Louis Stevenson, without realizing it, described the archetypal conflict between the persona, the socially acceptable mask, and the shadow. Dr. Jekyll, in his attempt to suppress his dark desires and impulses to create the image of a flawless gentleman, did not destroy them. He isolated them into a separate entity, Mr. Hyde. And the more Jekyll tried to control and hide Hyde, the more powerful and destructive this exiled aspect became. Hyde, originally intended to be an innocent receptacle for vice, became a monster because he was denied integration, denied recognition of his energy as part of the whole. He was that unpaid energy which eventually tore his creator apart, because ignoring shadow aspects does not lead to their disappearance, but only amplifies their destructive power. Just as Hyde haunted Jekyll, our shadow figures in dreams pursue us, demanding attention to those aspects we so diligently hide. Understanding these universal laws is merely the first step. For the shadow, as we are beginning to realize, manifests not abstractly, but through concrete forms, through faces that we either see in the mirror of dreams or project onto the surrounding world. We have already touched upon the hidden depths where the shadow resides, that part of ourselves that was banished beyond the threshold of consciousness, rejected, locked away in the prison of the unconscious. But how exactly does this exile manifest itself when the veil of reality thins and we descend into the realm of Morpheus? In dreams, the shadow takes on flesh, becoming a character, sometimes terrifyingly familiar, sometimes chillingly alien. This is its language, its message cloaked in symbols of fear and revulsion. Let's examine the faces this shadow projection most often assumes. First and perhaps most common is the pursuer. This could be an unseen threat, a relentlessly advancing shadow, a beast with glowing eyes, or even a distinctly human figure, a robber, a murderer, someone whose intent feels like pure evil. The essence lies not in the specific image, but in the feeling, a relentless chase, an inexorable approach, the threat of being swallowed or destroyed. This archetype often embodies suppressed aspects of our own aggression, ambition, or even self-preservation instincts that we deemed unacceptable. We flee from what we believe will destroy us, but in reality, we are fleeing from a power that could become a potent tool if we learn to master it. The second, no less terrifying embodiment of the shadow is the monster. It differs from the pursuer in its form, often something amorphous, monstrous, lacking clear outlines, or conversely, hypertrophiedly ugly, embodying primal terror. A dragon, a giant spider, something from the depths of the ocean or cosmos. All these are offspring of our deep-seated fear of chaos, of what we cannot control. The monster often symbolizes suppressed aspects of our animal nature, untamed instincts, sexuality, anger, or creative energy that were labeled as destructive and thus driven deep within. Their appearance is a cry for recognition, for the necessity of integrating these powerful yet wild forces. And finally, the repulsive figure. This could be a beggar, a cripple, a sick person, an ugly old man, or any character who evokes irrational revulsion, contempt, or disgust in us. Unlike the monster, this figure can be entirely human, yet its appearance awakens a strong desire in us to turn away, to avoid contact. This image often carries those qualities that we categorically reject within ourselves, those weaknesses, vulnerabilities, flaws that we consider shameful and unacceptable. This could be our own need for help, our inability to be perfect, our vulnerability to pain or failure. Consider what types of characters, whether in your dreams or in reality, provoke irrational hatred, contempt, or intense irritation in you. Perhaps it's people who are overly emotional or conversely indifferent, those who show weakness or those who are too self-assured. In these projections often lie the keys to your own carefully hidden shadow aspects. Let me share a brief story. A while ago, an artist, let's call her Emma, came to me. For several months, she had been haunted by the same dream. She was running through an endless labyrinth of black walls with something hot on her heels. It had no face, but Emma felt its presence as an icy breath on her neck. It was the pursuer in its purest form. By day, Emma was a paragon of calm and control. Her paintings were perfect but lifeless, almost sterile. She avoided any conflicts, any display of anger, considering them destructive. In her childhood, anger was strictly condemned. We began to explore this image. Who was this pursuer? What did it want? Initially, Emma replied, "It wants to destroy me." But gradually, as she delved deeper, she began to realize that the feeling it evoked was not only fear, but also a strange, almost electric tension. She recalled instances when she wanted to assert herself but suppressed that impulse, when she wanted to express rage but froze instead. This pursuer, it turned out, was her suppressed, unexpressed aggression, her capacity for self-defense and asserting her boundaries. In the labyrinth of the dream, it pursued her not to destroy her, but to be recognized, to be integrated. When Emma began to consciously work with this part of herself, allowing herself to express healthy aggression in situations requiring the protection of her interests, the pursuer in her dreams changed. It didn't disappear, but became less threatening, and one day even turned around and offered her something resembling a key. These shadow characters don't come to us without reason. They carry not only echoes of what we have rejected, but also the seeds of what can heal us. Within each of these frightening images lies not just a shadow, but a certain power, a resource that we have banished from our lives, thereby depriving ourselves of something critically important. The true work begins when we stop running, when we dare to turn around and look our demon in the eye, for it is often there in the very heart of its terror that a priceless gift is hidden. We have spoken of the shadow as a messenger carrying something significant yet distorted. Now it's time to look deeper into these distorted mirrors of the subconscious and understand what exactly they reflect. For every demon appearing in our dreams is not a curse, but an encrypted blessing, an exiled power awaiting its return. Let's recall the pursuer. Its silhouette, flickering in the dream labyrinth, evokes panic, makes the heart pound, and the lungs desperately gasp for air. But what if this relentless chaser is not an enemy, but the embodiment of the very driving force you have suppressed? It could be the embodiment of your ambition, thirst for achievement, determination, which was condemned as excessive or aggressive. It is that part of you that strives for change, for breakthrough, for the realization of unspoken desires. When you run from the pursuer, you are running from your own potential, from the opportunity to take your life into your own hands. What valuable ability, right or resource have you forbidden yourself by exiling this vice into the shadow? Perhaps it's your right to boldly take initiative, to assert your boundaries, to actively pursue your goals without fear of judgment. You might have forbidden yourself from being persistent, confident, audacious, fearing to be too much, too noticeable, too strong, too demanding. The pursuer is your unused energy, your will to live, demanding release. Or take the monster. Its appearance can be repulsive, its actions destructive. It embodies chaos, uncontrolled impulses, primal fears. But within this chaos lies colossal, untamed power, the genuine might of your nature. The monster is something wild, raw, yet incredibly alive. It could be your suppressed creativity, your passion, your capacity for radical transformations, even for destroying the old to create the new. These are instincts that you learn to suppress, considering them unacceptable, beastly, or socially dangerous. You might have forbidden yourself from feeling deeply, expressing anger or joy in their fullness. Being spontaneous, unpredictable, what valuable ability, right, or resource have you forbidden yourself by exiling this monster into the shadow? Perhaps it's the right to a full spectrum of emotions, to authentic self-expression without censorship, to access the deep sources of your life energy, which seems too powerful for you to control. You fear destroying something important by expressing this power, but in reality, you are suppressing your own capacity for renewal. And finally, the repulsive figure. It can be weak, ugly, sick, evoking feelings of disgust or shame. This is the part of you that you consider unworthy, unattractive, flawed, which you desperately try to hide from the world and from yourself. But it is precisely in this rejected vulnerability that the deepest humanity, the capacity for compassion, genuine sincerity, is contained. The repulsive figure can symbolize your vulnerability, your need for acceptance, your capacity for empathy, your inner pain that you do not allow yourself to feel. These are qualities that society often interprets as weakness, forcing us to hide them behind a mask of strength and perfection. What valuable ability, right, or resource have you forbidden yourself by exiling this ugly part into the shadow? Perhaps it's the right to be imperfect, the right to make mistakes, to be weak, to feel sadness, to need help. Is your capacity for true intimacy, for being seen as you are without embellishment. You might have forbidden yourself from showing your true nature, fearing rejection, not being good enough, or even worse, being exploited. Thus, each of these shadow characters is not merely a frightening image, but a distorted reflection of vital energy that has been banished from your consciousness. These are the parts of you that you once deemed unacceptable, dangerous, or shameful, and locked away in the dungeon of the subconscious. But they haven't disappeared. They have merely taken on a terrifying guise to attract your attention, to force you to acknowledge their existence. Refusing to acknowledge these inner exiles has consequences that permeate not only dreams, but also the very fabric of our waking reality. We have discussed the shadow as an inner exile, those aspects of our soul that were rejected and locked away in the subconscious. They appear to us in disturbing dreams, taking on the guises of pursuers, monsters, or repulsive figures, bringing messages from the depths that we so stubbornly deny. But what happens when these messages remain unopened, when we continue to flee from our own demons instead of gazing upon their true face? The price of refusing this internal dialogue is high, and we pay it not only with emotional discomfort, but also with real, tangible limitations in life, affecting our inner freedom and expression. Imagine an artist whose dreams for many years have been tormented by the image of a fierce, roaring beast, tearing canvases and breaking brushes. The artist wakes up in a cold sweat, convinced that this beast symbolizes his own inability to maintain order, his chaotic, destructive nature, which in his belief can only harm his creativity. He fears this wild, primal force within him, and therefore consciously chooses the path of sterile academic painting, adhering to strict rules, avoiding any spontaneous impulse. His paintings are technically flawless, but lack the spark, that living pulsation that distinguishes a work of art from a craft. His potential as an innovator, as an expresser of untamed beauty, remains unrealized. He suffers from an inner emptiness, from the feeling that his true voice is silenced because he himself banished it, fearing to become that monster that destroys everything in its path. He does not realize that this monster in his dreams is not a destroyer, but the embodiment of untamed passion, that very chaotic, primal energy necessary for breakthrough, for creating something truly alive and original. His fear of this inner power compels him to make decisions that extinguish his own fire, depriving him of the freedom to be a true creator. Or take a person in whose dreams a certain pursuer constantly appears, a dark figure relentlessly catching up to them when they try to escape. In waking life, this person avoids any conflicts, is unable to assert their boundaries, constantly yields to others' demands, even if it goes against their own desires and needs. They fear being aggressive, assertive, selfish, qualities that they believe their pursuer embodies. They believe that displaying these traits would make them bad or unacceptable. As a result, they constantly feel cornered, their energy depleted, and their inner voice whispers of injustice. They cannot realize their potential as a leader, a protector, someone capable of confidently pursuing their goals, because they are running from their own strength, from the ability to say no, from the healthy aggression necessary for self-defense and achievement. Their fear of being like this pursuer, that is, possessing willpower and the capacity for confrontation, forces them to sacrifice their own autonomy and happiness, making disadvantageous decisions that deprive them of inner freedom. And what about the repulsive figure, ugly, infirm, or evoking disgust? Suppose it often appears in the dreams of someone who has always strived to be perfect, strong, independent. In real life, they do not allow themselves to show weakness, ask for help, or acknowledge their mistakes or vulnerability. They fear being imperfect, needy, repulsive. What they believe this figure embodies. They build a wall of impregnability around themselves, pushing away those who could offer support and refusing deep emotional intimacy. Their self-knowledge suffers as they deny a whole part of their humanity, and their inner harmony is disrupted by the constant tension of needing to maintain a facade. They cannot fully realize their potential for empathy. For deep, authentic relationships, because the fear of their own vulnerability forces them to make decisions that lead to isolation and emotional impoverishment. Perhaps at this point you might ask, but must I become that monster, that pursuer, that repulsive figure? Does embracing the shadow mean transforming into something I hate and flee from? And this is a crucial objection, deserving of the closest attention. The answer lies not in becoming that image, but in integrating the energy, the quality it symbolizes. To embrace your shadow does not mean unleashing destructive power. It means realizing that aggression can be not only violence, but also the ability to protect oneself and one's boundaries. That chaos can be not only destruction, but also a source of untamed creativity and spontaneity. That vulnerability is not weakness, but a path to deep connection and true spiritual strength. Suffering and failures arise not from the presence of these qualities, but from their suppression and denial. It is precisely the fear of resembling these demons from our dreams, the fear of the qualities they symbolize, that compels us to make choices which deprive us of inner freedom, shackle our potential, and hinder self-discovery. We flee from ourselves, and this race is exhausting. Consciously embracing these aspects allows us to transform them from an unconscious, destructive force into a conscious, manageable resource. It's not about becoming a monster, but about harnessing its primal energy for creation. It's not about being a persecutor, but about gaining its persistence to achieve goals. It's not about being repulsive, but about allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and open to genuine connection. Refusing this step is to refuse the fullness of one's own being, the opportunity to live in harmony with oneself. However, there is another side to the coin, another form of projection, no less insidious, though cloaked in the shining garments of admiration. Sometimes we give away to others what rightfully belongs to us. We've discussed the shadow, those rejected facets that wander the fringes of the psyche, appearing to us as persecutors and monsters, carrying echoes of suppressed ambitions, aggression, and vulnerability. We've explored how these exiled aspects, deprived of recognition, accumulate energy and demand integration. But the path to wholeness is winding, and on it we encounter not only the shadows of the abyss, but also shining shadows that blind us with their light, leading us astray just as cunningly. There's another shadow, no less powerful than the one we typically associate with darkness. This is the golden shadow, a treasury of unrecognized gifts, untapped talents, and unutilized strength and beauty that we sometimes unconsciously project onto others. We fear the magnitude of our own potential as much as our own perceived baseness. To recognize the genius, the visionary, the creator within ourselves is as frightening as accepting the beast within. It's easier to admire someone else's light than to ignite our own. It's simpler to bow before an idol than to realize that this pedestal is built from your own unclaimed bricks. This projection is not just harmless admiration. It is a subtle form of self-sabotage. Every time you see an ideal in someone, be it a wise psychologist, an enlightened guru, or a masterful dream interpreter, pause. Ask yourself, what exactly in this person resonates so strongly with you? Is it not a reflection of what lies dormant within you? We surrender our crowns, our scepters, our invisible wings to those we place, on a pedestal. We believe that wisdom belongs to them, not to us. That insight is their gift, not our potential. We become perpetual students instead of realizing ourselves as masters of our own destiny and our own dreams. Consider who is your beacon in the world of depth psychology, spiritual quests, or the mysterious art of dream interpretation. Whose ideas seem so perfect to you that you are ready to follow them unconditionally, distrusting your own inner voice? What qualities of this person? Their intuition, their courage in exploring the unknown, their ability to see hidden meanings, their unique perspective on the world. Do you revere as something unattainable for you? And here's the most crucial question to consider. Which of your own as yet unrevealed talents, unrealized abilities, unspoken insights have you gifted to this idol, refusing to acknowledge them as your own? Imagine that these gifts, given away by you, do not lie on the altar of another's success, but await their hour in the hidden chambers of your soul. They will not manifest until you dare to reclaim them, until you stop seeking answers externally instead of listening to the whisper of your own unconscious. To find the golden shadow means to perform a profound act of inner reclamation, to take back what was unjustly given away. This is not merely a path to self-knowledge. It is a path to true strength, to a completeness that requires no external support. And if we have learned to see in the frightening images of dreams a reflection of our suppressed qualities, then now is the time to learn to recognize in the radiance of others' achievements the glimmer of our own unlit star. Sometimes to gain this strength, only one step is needed, a step that allows you to view your dreams and yourself not as an external observer, but as the sole and rightful creator of your inner world, capable of drawing wisdom from both depths and darkness and light. We have spoken of the shadow as an unseen conversationalist whispering to us through the veil of dreams, of its guises, persecutors, monsters, repulsive figures, each carrying a message cloaked in fear or aversion. We have come to understand that these images are not enemies, but distorted reflections of what was once rejected and then banished from consciousness into the depths of the psyche. But knowing is only the first step. True transformation begins when knowledge becomes action, when we cease to be passive observers and reach out to what we once rejected. The essence of this new philosophy is not merely to accept the shadow, but to reclaim it. This is not a capitulation to chaos, but an act of sovereign return of what was surrendered to the unconscious, what was projected onto the world outside. For every aspect we condemn in another, or conversely, idolize, is merely an echo of our own, either rejected or unrecognized, power. The persecutor in your dream is not an external aggressor, but your own imprisoned determination, yearning for action. The monster is not a beast, but your primal, unbridled creativity, capable of both destruction and creation. The repulsive figure is not a symbol of ugliness, but the embodiment of your vulnerability, which when accepted becomes a source of authentic empathy and connection. The time has come not just to interpret symbols, but to enter into dialogue with them, transforming their energy from destructive to creative. Imagine that each shadow character is not a key to the past, but a door to your future, to that part of you that awaits its liberation. This is not a battle, but a dance where you lead, and the shadow finally reveals its true form, no longer terrifying, but powerful. Here's a simple exercise, a gateway to this dialogue. Let's call it the shadow mirror. Choose a dream in which you encountered a shadow figure, a persecutor, a monster, or someone who caused you strong aversion. If you don't have such a dream, recall a person whose qualities you absolutely cannot tolerate, or conversely, whom you excessively idealize. Sit in silence, close your eyes. Imagine this image before you. Do not try to change or banish it. Simply observe. Allow it to be. Now, once the image is fixed in your inner vision, ask it 3 questions. 1. What do you want to tell me? Listen not with your ears, but with your entire being. Perhaps you will hear a word, see an image, or feel an impulse. Write down the first thing that comes to mind. 2. What part of me do you represent? What strength or quality do you carry? Here, it's important not to seek a logical answer, but to let intuition guide you. Perhaps the monster will reply, I am your unbridled passion for life, and the persecutor, I am your unrealized ambition. 3. What do I need to do to integrate you? The answer might be unexpected. Stop being afraid to be loud. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Start creating without looking back. Write down everything that comes. These are not just notes. They are a manuscript of your inner alchemy. Each answer is a thread to weave into the fabric of your conscious life. This process is not always pleasant. It requires courage to look directly at what has been rejected. But the reward is not just freedom from nightmares, but the attainment of genuine strength, wholeness, and freedom. For when you reclaim these alienated aspects, you stop projecting them onto the world, and the world begins to respond to you differently. This path, the path of reconciliation with the shadow, is only the beginning of a deeper dive into the fathomless expanses of the psyche. It opens doors to other equally powerful archetypes that await their moment to reveal new facets of our true nature and our place in the universe.